Virgo, take care of yourself first. Your radiance will shine even brighter. There's a phrase you've heard so many times you've stopped feeling its weight. Take care of yourself first. You listen, nod, and the next minute you're solving someone else's problem. Not because you've forgotten about yourself, because deep down, taking care of others has never been just about them. It's always been a way of avoiding having to look inward. Virgos have a rare talent, seeing what's out of place before anyone else notices, a crooked detail, a poorly chosen phrase, a silence that weighs more than it should. Nothing escapes that gaze. And that same gaze, so precise, so generous when turned outward, almost never turns inward with the same gentleness. There's a reason for that, one that perhaps you've never named. While you're busy adjusting everyone else's lives around you, something inside you is waiting its turn. It's not laziness, it's not carelessness, it's fear, disguised as usefulness. Because if you stop solving other people's problems, silence remains. And within that silence, you're the one who emerges. And for Virgo, emerging sometimes hurts more than any criticism received from the outside. Think about how this works. Someone calls crying at 11 o'clock at night, and you already have a solution on the tip of your tongue. A friend makes the same mistake for the third time, and you still have the patience to explain again, calmly, carefully. But when it's your turn to make a mistake, your turn to cry, your turn to need comfort, something inside you freezes. You turn your back on your own pain with the same efficiency with which you solve the pain of others. This isn't coldness, it's a protective system so well constructed that it doesn't even seem like protection. It seems like personality. From an early age, perhaps you learned that being useful guaranteed you a place, that solving and handling everything was safer than needing it. And little by little, without realizing it, you traded the right to be cared for the habit of caring. The problem is that this habit comes at a silent price. It doesn't appear all at once. It appears in pieces, in the tiredness that doesn't go away even after sleeping, in the sudden irritation with small things, in the feeling of doing everything right and still feeling empty inside. The body sends messages before the mind is willing to listen. And you, so good at deciphering others, pretend not to understand your own signals. There's a scene that repeats itself with variations in the life of almost every Virgo. You help someone, deliver the perfect solution, see the relief on the other person's face, and for a second, you feel something akin to peace. But this peace is never yours. It's borrowed. It lasts as long as the task is done and disappears as soon as the next problem comes into line. And there's always a next problem, always one more detail to correct before you allow yourself to breathe. Notice how this never ends naturally. It's not a lack of time. It's that you haven't created space to exist outside of the function of solving problems. If someone asked you now what you really need, not what others need from you, but what you need, would the answer come easily? Or would there be that awkward silence first, because that question hasn't been asked in so long that you've forgotten how to answer it? This isn't a character flaw. It's a learned pattern, reinforced every time someone said, "How lucky to have you around," and you felt that it was worth more than anything you could do for yourself. The compliment became fuel. And fuel, as much as it may seem like an engine, is also what keeps the car from stopping when it needs to. Because understanding would mean stopping, and stopping would mean facing the question you've been putting off for years. What is this question anyway? It's not about a full schedule, nor about productivity. It's simpler and far more uncomfortable. Why does taking care of yourself seem harder than taking care of anyone else in the world? It was while searching for answers to this that I found this digital book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose, isn't about yet another to-do list for you to complete perfectly. It's about a shift in attitude, stopping treating your own well-being as a reward for deserving it and starting to see it as a basic right. For Virgo, this is revolutionary because the constant pursuit of perfection often hides precisely the part of you that needs the most care. The book doesn't promise miracles. It promises to restore clarity, which, for a mind like yours, is worth more than any empty promise. If you've made it this far, it's because something in this matter touched a place you normally avoid looking at. The discomfort you feel now isn't a sign that something is wrong with you. It's a sign that a part of you has been asking for attention for a long time, and today it has finally been heard. Don't let this recognition pass by like just another forgotten video scrolling through your feed. It rarely returns with the same force. The link is in the first pinned comment. But be aware, this content may be taken down. Click now and download your copy. Now answer honestly in the comments. When was the last time you took care of yourself without feeling guilty about it? The question you've been putting off for years is, deep down this, would you be worth the same if you stopped being useful tomorrow? Not the answer you give when someone asks jokingly. The real answer, the one you avoid facing even in the middle of the night, alone, when no one is asking anything of you. There's a very specific kind of guilt that Virgos carry, and it doesn't have a pretty name. It's the guilt of existing without being useful to anyone. Have you ever noticed how difficult it is to truly rest, without that little voice demanding a list of things that should be done at this very moment? It's not a lack of discipline, it's that at some point in your history, simply existing for the sake of existing began to seem insufficient. You learned, unintentionally, that you needed to justify your own place in the world. Imagine a scale. On one side, everything you deliver, attention, solutions, promptness, the ability to solve what no one else can. On the other side, almost nothing, because you never included the simple fact of your existence. The scale never balances because it was set up wrong from the start. Trying to balance self-worth with productivity is like trying to balance an object on a scale that only has one pan. And the worst part is, the more you give, the more people get used to receiving. Nobody asks you to stop because nobody else sees the price it takes. Only you feel the weight. Only you know how much it costs to keep this machine running without ever stopping to ask if it still makes sense. And there's an even more uncomfortable question waiting just ahead. What if the reason you never stop isn't a lack of time, but the fear of what's left when you finally stop? Think about how many times you said yes when your whole body screamed no. How many times did you accept yet another task, another favor, another responsibility, not because you wanted to, but because refusing seemed to disappoint someone, and disappointing someone, for Virgos, often hurts more than silently overloading themselves. You learn to calculate the emotional cost to others with impressive precision, but you never learn to calculate your own. This creates a strange cycle. The more you deliver, the more competent you seem, and the more competent you seem, the more people expect from you. The pattern is self-reinforcing. No one needs to explicitly ask you to continue. The very system you've built already does it automatically every day without you having to say a word. And the most curious thing is that, on the outside, everything seems to work. You deliver, you solve problems, you sustain them. People trust you precisely because you never fail. But inside, there's a weariness that doesn't have an official name, because it doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from never having space to simply be without producing anything in return. This weariness doesn't show up in blood tests. It lives in a deeper place, where you keep everything you pretend not to feel. This unbalanced scale won't fix itself, and insisting on carrying everything without ever giving anything back to yourself only increases the debt. The divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose exists precisely for this blind spot. It helps you see the true discernment behind the self-criticism you've built as your identity and restores your right to exist without needing to justify every minute with productivity. This content may be taken down at any time. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. There's a mirror that every Virgo knows very well, but rarely looks at directly. It's not the bathroom mirror. You face that one every day without a problem. It's the invisible mirror that appears when someone compliments you on something you've done for others. And a part of you, deep down, whispers, if they knew what I'm really like inside, would they still like me like this? This is the most hidden mechanism of all. You analyze everything, others, situations, the details of the entire world, except yourself, because truly analyzing yourself would mean admitting that perhaps you're not as well adjusted as everyone believes, and maintaining this image of someone who can handle everything has unintentionally become more important than actually being okay. It's like carrying a mirror on your back all day. You know it's there, you feel the weight, but you never turn your face to look properly because you're afraid of what you might find. And the longer you go without looking, the more that reflection accumulates with unresolved issues, swallowed feelings, and weariness disguised as strength. The question that remains isn't whether you're strong enough to look in that mirror. You've already proven, every day, that you can endure far more than most people could. The real question is, what happens when you finally decide to turn your face away and discover that what you so feared seeing was in fact just exhaustion asking for rest, not a flaw to hide? There's a silent belief, almost never spoken aloud, that sustains all this fear. The idea that being seen in your entirety, with your flaws, your doubts, the days when nothing goes right, would mean losing the respect you've worked so hard to earn. As if admiration and imperfection couldn't coexist, as if you had to choose between being loved and being real. But this belief stemmed from a specific way of surviving, not from an absolute truth about who you are. Perhaps at some point, even as a child, you realized that mistakes lead to disappointment and successes lead to approval. And your brain, always seeking security, decided, then I'll make as few mistakes as possible, always. I'll be so precise that no one has a reason to be disappointed in me. And it worked for a long time. But the price of this strategy was extremely high. You traded the possibility of being loved for who you are, for the certainty of being admired for what you do. There's a huge difference between those two things. Being admired for what you do is comfortable, but shallow, because it disappears the day you stop delivering. Being loved for who you are, with all your flaws and imperfections, is riskier, but it's the only thing that truly sustains someone in the long run, and the first step to achieving that never comes from the outside. It comes from you deciding to look in the mirror you've been carrying on your back for so long without running away from what you find there. Turning your face to that mirror feels much easier when you have a guide who doesn't judge you in the process. That's exactly what the divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose proposes. A practical path to transform that automatic self-criticism into real discernment, without the harshness that Virgo usually uses on itself. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about stopping hiding who you already are behind usefulness. This material has limited availability and may be taken down without notice. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. There's something curious about Virgo that almost no one notices from the outside. The brilliance of this sign was never meant to draw attention. It's discreet, functional, almost invisible. The kind of light that illuminates the path of others without ever pointing to itself. And for a long time, that seemed enough. Helping was enough. Being useful seemed like enough brilliance. But there's a huge difference between lighting the way for others and dimming your own. When you direct 100% of your attention, your energy, your ability to perceive details outward, very little light is left for yourself. Not because you don't deserve to shine, because all the fuel has already been spent taking care of everything around you before you even remember that you also need light. Imagine a lamp pointed all day to illuminate someone else's room. It fulfills its function perfectly, but it never illuminates the space where it is. Over time, that space becomes dark, even with so much light being produced all the time. That's exactly what happens when caring for others becomes an automatic reflex and caring for oneself becomes a rare exception. The brilliance that people acknowledge in you, the one they constantly praise, was never your full brilliance. It was only the part that remained after you gave everything. Imagine, just imagine, what would happen if you turned that light inward, even for a moment. What would it reveal? What would change? What would finally cease to be hidden in the shadows of your own usefulness? There's a painful irony in all of this. You, who so clearly see the hidden talents in others, who know exactly where each person around you shines, even when they themselves don't realize it, rarely apply that same insight to yourself. You become an expert at recognizing the potential of others and remain a complete stranger to your own. Perhaps this happens because recognizing one's own brilliance requires a kind of vulnerability that recognizing the brilliance of others never does. Praising someone costs nothing. It's safe. It's generous. No one will accuse you of arrogance for it. But admitting to yourself that you are also good, that you also deserve recognition, that you also have something valuable to offer beyond your usefulness, that touches deeper layers. It feels like an exposure. It feels like a risk that Virgo, so calculating, prefers not to take. But there's a limit to how long a light can shine outwards without ever recharging. You've felt this before, even without naming it. That moment when helping stops being pleasurable and becomes an obligation. When solving someone else's problem, which once brought a good feeling, now only brings anticipated exhaustion. This isn't a sign that you've stopped caring. It's a sign that the source is dry, and no dry source continues to produce water longer than the body can endure, pretending everything is all right. Turning that light inward doesn't happen by chance. It needs direction. And that's exactly where the divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose comes in. It was designed for Virgos to redirect that same analytical capacity, so sharp when focused on others, to build clarity about their own purpose without getting lost again in demands and perfection. It's the difference between continuing to shine only outwardly or finally illuminating your own space as well. Access is limited and may be withdrawn at any time. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. There's a silent, almost imperceptible moment when Virgo understands something that changes everything. Taking care of herself isn't about abandoning those she helps. It's about stopping self-neglect to continue helping. It's not about choosing between yourself and others. It's about remembering that you're also on the list of people who deserve your care. Not last, not as an afterthought, but as a natural part of the same circuit. Notice how this changes the way you look back. Every time you put yourself second, you weren't being weak. You were surviving the way you knew how, using the only tool that seemed to work, being indispensable to others so you never had to admit your own neediness. But surviving isn't the same as thriving, and there's a huge difference between staying afloat and finally allowing yourself to rest without guilt. You don't need to become a different person for that. You don't need to stop being caring, nor stop noticing the details that make you so special to those around you. You just need to remember that this same attention can and should turn inward from time to time. That resting isn't laziness, that saying no sometimes is an act of love as great as any yes you've ever said. There's a scene that may not have happened yet, but it's waiting for you. The day someone asks how you are, and instead of the usual automatic response, "Fine, busy, but everything's all right," you'll pause, a real pause. And you'll answer honestly, even if the answer isn't perfect, even if it involves tiredness, doubt, or simply the desire not to have to handle everything alone. This moment, small as it seems, is the beginning of a completely different relationship with yourself. No one is asking you to stop being who you are. Your attention to detail, your dedication, your ability to care remain rare and valuable gifts. The difference is that from now on, these gifts can flow in two directions, not just one. You can continue to be the person others admire and at the same time be the first person on your own care list, not the last, not the one left over after everyone else has been taken care of. Virgo's brilliance has always existed. It never needed to be conquered, only recognized. And perhaps the true transformation lies not in doing more, helping more, solving more, but in finally allowing that light, so generous to the world, to learn to rest with the same delicacy upon you. Because when that happens, the brilliance doesn't diminish. It simply finds for the first time a place to rest. And it is from there, from that quiet and whole place, that it begins to shine brighter than ever.